Hey, Emily. Good morning. It is your dad, Miguel. It's nice to see you this morning. I hope you're doing well. Today is what day is today? The 4th of January, 2018. It is a Friday. Lovely Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. That's what I say sometimes. Anyway, I am pleased to have you here, and let's spend some time together. Why don't we? What a fine idea. Boy, I tell you, I am really looking forward to getting these braces removed. Yeah, it'll be a good thing. And what's great is that I've got my removal appointment scheduled for the 16th of January, which is a mere 12 days away. Oh man, I'm so happy. It's going to be awesome. Going to have nice, straight, healthy teeth. My teeth have never been healthier. My teeth and gums never been healthier. I've been spending a lot of time over the past few year or so focused on dental hygiene, using my water flosser, and I've been putting a lot of energy and resources into improving my teeth and gums. And I think I've made some excellent progress. I've, especially when it comes to oral health, and I'm just so proud of myself. I'm so glad things are coming together, and not only that, but come the 16th of January, my smile will be exceedingly beautiful and ordered. So it's good news all around, both health wise and appearance wise for my mouth. So very pleased about that. Looking forward to that change that will take place in only 12 days. I've been wearing braces for about 13 months now. 13 months, which I remember the day that I got them on, and it was definitely a change from what I was used to. I was certainly looking forward to the change, and I was thankful that I could manage it. 14-year-old girls manage it. If 14-year-old girls can manage it, I thought I could manage it too, and I could. I've gotten used to them. They're very normal to me, but there are a few things that I miss. Let me share with you a few things that I miss about having teeth that do not have braces on them. One of them is biting into apples. Oh, yeah. Let me tell you, I have this hankering. It is a deep, deep longing to bite into apples. Why? I have no idea. I think I just associate pleasure and enjoyment with biting into a crisp apple, a Granny Smith apple, namely. I'm also a big fan of pink lady apples, but I'll take a Fuji apple any day, that's for sure. And so, yeah, looking forward to biting into an apple when I get these braces off. Yeah, that's something I really miss. Another thing I miss, I did not know how much I missed it, but I miss being comfortable around eating nuts. I love nuts too. Peanuts, walnuts, cashews, filberts, even the lowly filbert. Brazil nuts. Oh, yeah. Sunflower seeds. Oh, man, I can't wait to dive headfirst into some sunflower seeds. So, yeah, I've been missing nuts. I can have nuts. I know I can if I carefully eat them. But boy, to eat nuts with reckless and wild abandon, well, that's a whole new story. Thankfully, I've had peanut butter to hold me in my in the stead of not being able to eat nuts. Thankfully, thank you for the creamy peanut butter that exists in the world. So yeah, I love nuts. Can't wait to start chomping on my nuts. On almonds, right? Yeah, that's right. Can't wait to start eating peanuts. Wow, hands of peanuts. That sounds really good too. So apples and peanuts. Those are definitely two things that I want to eat when I get my braces off. Also celery. I know. I have a hard Here's the problem. I love celery. Celery's great, but it's stringy. And it's hard for me to eat celery when I've got these braces on. And I just haven't been able to properly enjoy celery. So I'm looking forward to enjoying celery in the future. So celery, nuts, apples, and something else is coming to mind, like toffee and caramel. I would love to, with pleasure, eat caramel and taffy. And I've been unable to eat it with pleasure because that stuff just gets into my dental work. It really gets into my brackets, gets under the wires. It just becomes this whole thing. So definitely looking forward to eating some very soft candy. Really, I think those are probably it. You know, but I think the number one thing that I miss eating is the apples. I'll tell you, I used to eat one or two or maybe three apples a day, and very rarely would I eat less than one apple. That was just my standard intake. I would eat apples all the time. I loved apples of all sorts. I used to eat apples like I eat tomatoes today. Tomatoes, I love tomatoes. Tomatoes do not last long in my home, not in this household. They don't last long in the refrigerator. Even if I buy lots of tomatoes, those tomatoes are gone in a short time. What is it? I think tomatoes have this deep umami flavor. They're also slightly sour, so they've got that vinegar sourness, and then they've got um, I don't know, maybe they're a little salty. I don't know. There's something about tomatoes that really drives me wild. And I eat a lot of tomatoes. And thankfully, my braces haven't prevented me from eating tomatoes. But definitely looking forward to eating those apples and some more nuts, almonds, and such. So, looking forward to that time. Now, you might have noticed that I was covering my mouth because I was coughing just a second ago. Yeah, I still have this cold that my immune system is working on. It's a project, and it's been going on for only about 5 days, but I think this cold is on the way out, thankfully. My immune system is making good, significant progress against this cold. I've only had it for a few days, been uncomfortable, only slightly. I've been working out as regular. The last 5 days, I've worked out 5 days in a row at the gym. Yesterday, I went swimming. I swam a kilometer, felt great, but also am looking forward to finally dealing the final blow to this virus. And I'm hoping that maybe by tomorrow, the cold will be mostly gone and I could start thinking about other things besides coughing and sniffling. Yep. And that'll be good news because I think I'm going to Universal Studios tomorrow. But I hear the weather report says that it's going to rain in Hollywood, California tomorrow. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully, I feel significantly better tomorrow than I do today. Who knows? I just want to get in my 9-mile walk, my 18,000 steps, my 10-mile walk. If I can get in a 10-mile walk tomorrow, That would be fabulous. No matter where I go to get it. Maybe I'll stroll along the Central Coast somewhere. Maybe La Prisma Mission if I don't go to Universal Studios. We'll see how that all works out. I can't tell the future. A lot of it is just dependent on this cold of mine. So one thing that I've done recently is that I pulled something out of my cabinet, and let me show it to you. First, out of my book cabinet, I pulled out this book. This is the National Audubon Society Field Guide to Insects and Spiders. An amazing book. It's got pictures of insects at the beginning, and it's got descriptions of their qualities at the end. And not only that, but I pulled this out of the cupboard. This, although it's a container, it's a plastic container, but it's a container that's meant to house insects. You see, if you look at the top, there is a little grate on the roof of this box. On the top of this box, it's intended to allow insects to breathe. And there's this container is clear so that you can see the insects walking around inside the container. So there was a time when I was interested in insects, collecting them, understanding them, maybe having them as pets for a little while, then setting them free after a couple days. And I thought it'd be fun to collect them, and I thought it'd be fun to collect them with you, perhaps. You might remember when I invited you to go out and do some insect collecting a couple of years back. Well, who knows? I might be still interested in doing that. Oh, absolutely. And I also am quite interested in learning about insects. What an amazing hobby. So I figured what I'd do is maybe I'd take a moment out to examine an insect in this book and just come to understand it and what its properties are. And one of the things I just looked at is ladybugs. I'm a big fan of ladybugs. So I'm just going to choose one here. I'm going to choose this one. This one looks the most familiar to me. This one's called the convergent ladybug beetle. The convergent ladybug beetle. Look at those dots, those black dots. I love ladybugs. So they are plate number 148, and they're described on page number 582. So let's go to that page and learn something about convergent ladybug beetles. Here we go. So here's the description of the convergent ladybug beetle. 1/4 to 3/8 inches, oval, convex above. Pronstum black and white border with 2 converging white stripes. Elytra are red or orange with 13 black spots, 1 spot at scutellum and 6 on each elytron. Sometimes spots are enlarged to form 3 transverse bands. Larva is velvety black with 8 orange spots. Pupa is black with red spots. Habitat: woods, meadows, and gardens. Range throughout North America. Food: aphids and other small insects. That's as good as they can do when it comes to finding food for ladybugs. Aphids and other small insects is the best they can say. Life cycle: female may lay up to 500 eggs during a lifespan of a few months. Clusters of 5 to 30 eggs are attached on leaves and twigs. Larvae feed, then pupate, attached by the black end to some support. Many generations a year, if the food supply is good. Large numbers of ladybugs occasionally find their way into houses in autumn looking for places to spend the winter. In the West, huge swarms fly into mountain canyons, overwinter under leaves, and return to valleys in the spring. Overwintering beetles are sometimes purchased by mail and freed near crops that are vulnerable to aphids. Well, that's the description of the convergent ladybug beetle. So pretty neat stuff. Now this, believe it or not, is building in me an internal desire to look for ladybugs and even take photographs of ladybugs. I have a camera with which to take photographs of ladybugs close up, but I do not have a macro lens. And you know what? That may be a good thing to do. I need to look into finding out how much a macro lens for my Canon M50 mirrorless camera costs. Maybe I can take photographs of insects. Anyway, that is interesting to me. I don't know if it interests you. I've always been a fan of biology. And, one thing that is, I think, somewhat regrettable about this book is now that although I appreciate its technical accuracy and the detail that it provides for these insects, I would guess that they could do a little better. I would like them to romanticize the ladybug a little bit. I'd like to hear more about its life story, its life cycle, its environment, the ecology. I would definitely like to know more than just what I would call the bare bones basics about this particular ladybug. I mean, the data that they gave in that little excerpt was quite sparse and didn't have what I'd call a lot of emotional terms in it. It really just it was much to be desired. There were no poems to the ladybug, ode to the ladybug. That poem was not found in this book. Though I still appreciate the miracle and the magic of ladybugs. I guess, and this goes back to something I've said before when it comes to writing about nature. I would like nature writing to be a little bit more romantic, and romantic in the sense that, emphasizing some of the more interesting and enjoyable parts of what it means to be a ladybug in a ladybug's environment. I'd like there to be a little more description, a little more sense of appreciation of what ladybugs are and what they do. But that's me. Maybe I should write my own book. Definitely the onus is on me. It's my responsibility to come up with a romantic way to think about ladybugs. For me, it's about reading a book like this is about enjoyment. And I guess I need to find a source for enjoying ladybugs a little bit more than I do through that book. All right, so I figured we'd enter the question and answer period for our session today, Emily. And what is the first question for me today? Good question. Here we are. Question number 132. Are you superstitious? Give an example. All right. So I am not superstitious. What that means is I believe in a mechanical universe. That is, my training as a physicist, my training as an engineer, or my work as an engineer, my learning about the world through clinical and scientific studies gives me a firm indication that the world is built of atoms working in mechanical, basically affected by the forces of nature, essentially the four forces: gravity, electromagnetism, strong force, and weak force. And pretty much that's all. Now, there are other things like fields and other things which are real. Yeah, subatomic particles which are real. Gluons and leptons and muons and neutrinos, you name it. All those things are real, and they act and react in ways according to laws that are understandable and relate to causal chains in, say, and laws of thermodynamics. So there's very little room in that picture to entertain this idea of superstition. Now, I can appreciate and enjoy superstitions. I think superstitions as stories can be really helpful for sometimes guidance, inspiration, motivation. So they can be helpful in a lot of ways. But I'm not superstitious. For example, I don't believe in ESP or telekinesis. But that's not quite what most people mean when they think about superstition. So I don't believe in things like luck or karma, or although I might use those terms, I might use those words because they're quite adequate when it comes to describing intentions or hopes for the future. Yeah. And they might describe feeling states, right? So I'll use the language, but I'll use that language metaphorically, right? Not literally. And that's what I call poetic license, right? People can use words that they don't necessarily agree with to express ideas more fully, more completely. So no, I'm not superstitious. And now, if there were any clinical studies that verified the existence of superstition, I would be right there, standing at attention to the facts of superstition. Though my current stance is that my level of belief in a certain idea is proportional to the evidence that supports the idea. So there's a one-to-one correspondence. If there's just a little bit of evidence for a certain idea, then my level of belief is just a little bit. But if there's a whole lot of evidence that supports an idea, then my belief in that idea is very strong. So, it's proportional to the evidence that's available. And if there were ever to be evidence of superstition being real, I would be right there supporting and advocating the existence of superstition. Easy. And all it takes is some ambitious fellow to perform an experiment and someone to back up that experiment with through verification. And boom, I'm there. It just takes 2 experiments, 2 small experiments, and I'll believe in superstition. So anyway, what's next? Question number 133. What one word best describes your mother? Well, what one word best describes my mother? I think it would be caring. I think of her as very caring. That would be the one word that I would use. How about your mother, Sheila? That's an interesting question. What word would, it's certainly you know your mom in a different way than I know your mom. And so your word would be probably different from mine. I think the word would be balanced. That is a very agreeable word. I think she's quite balanced. All right. Next question. Question number 134. What one word best describes your father? Okay, what one word would describe my father? What one word would describe my father? Optimistic. That's the word that I would use to describe my father. Optimistic. Yeah. So now, what is one word that I would use to describe your father, Emily? That is me. One word to describe me. Oh man. You know what? I'm going to use the same word to describe me as I used to describe my dad. Optimistic. Can you believe that? I didn't expect that would happen. My goodness. An apple does not fall far from the tree. In that I would use the same word to describe both my father and me. Interesting. Now, my father and my optimism, they're different. They have different qualities. Um, the way I express optimism is a lot different than the way my dad expresses optimism. My dad expresses optimism in a lot of different ways, of course, just as I do. My dad has a unique way of expressing business optimism, which I admire, where he believes the things that he values is that worth a lot of money. That's my dad. Whereas me, I'm not quite that hopeful. I've always had a tough time making money, whereas my dad is able to do it with ease. Well, relative ease anyway. It's not easy to make money. All right, what's the next question? Question number 135. Do you have a collection? And if so, what do you collect and why? So, if I were to say that I had a collection of anything, it would be a collection of photographs. That's it. That's what I got. That's all I got. I got a collection of photos. Now, why is the question? Why? Why do I collect them? Well, I love looking at old photographs. I think it's valuable. I've mentioned this in the past. I do have a love for photography. I love taking photographs. For me, it's about reflection, about the past, and enjoyment when it comes to reflecting about the past. It sort of provides indicators of where I was and maybe how far I've come since I took the photograph. And, there's a lot of value in it. I also like the idea of perspective and how perspective can change depending on where the camera is situated in the environment. And I think that's interesting. I also maybe there's lots of visual appeal. I sort of bend toward things that have visual appeal. That could be it. Maybe I have a love of beauty, a love of visual beauty. And I express that love through my photography. I wouldn't be surprised. So, yeah, that's my collection. Do I have collections of anything else? Let me think. Well, I've got, a book collection on my bookshelves and a digital e-bookshelf. But, I'm not sure that's really that interesting or important. So I enjoy reading some genres of books like self-help psychology and philosophy and science. Those are my interest areas. What else do I collect? I collect college degree credit hours. I don't know. That has more to do with my love of learning. And then I also have music. I have songs that I collect, but that has to do with my love of music and dancing. So those are my collections mainly. Okay, next question. When are you shy? Page 130, or question number 136. When am I shy? Well, I'm shy when the situation is new. When the situation is novel and I haven't sort of addressed or approached anything similar in the past. And that happens to me on occasion. It doesn't happen to me very often. When else am I shy? I think, like everyone, I'm shy when it comes to, how should I say? I'm shy when consequences might be serious. Like when I don't know what consequences, like sometimes there are grave consequences. I'm pretty shy when it comes to situations where there are grave consequences. And which means that I hesitate. Yeah. Okay, what's the next question? Question number 137. Do you tend to save everything or toss everything, and why? Excuse me. Well, I pride myself on being something of a minimalist. And by definition, I guess that would mean that I tend to toss everything. You know, I tend to err on the side of tossing, I guess. And why is that, you may ask? Well, you know, I get a special sense of satisfaction when the bare minimum of equipment is surrounding me. I'm not a real big fan of big collections of stuff that's not useful. I think it's wasteful. Um, I think they could take a lot of energy. Like I've known people who have bookshelves, books and bookshelves of books all over the place. And I admire people with large personal libraries. Though having all those books can be a problem. Like if they move, if they want to do some rearrangement of the furniture, there are drawbacks. There are negative aspects of having tons and tons of books or lots of collections of stuff. And it goes down to more than just expense. There's a cost in terms of peacefulness in one's household, I think, and peacefulness when it comes to managing change. If I have very few objects in my possession and change happens, then it's a lot easier for me to negotiate that change than if I had a lot of stuff hanging around. For example, I would never ever have a like a storage bin, or what do they call them? Storage room, storage shelf. I no, they're like a storage garage. Just storage. I don't know. Rent a storage unit. I don't think I'd ever rent a storage unit. That would be something that would make no sense for a person like me. Only if it were a very unusual circumstance, like I was traveling to Europe for a month or a year or two, and I knew I would be coming back soon. Then I would have a storage unit. But for the most part, I wouldn't necessarily ever get a storage unit. I would never acquire that much stuff to need a storage unit. I would hopefully find a way to work around that problem. If I didn't, then I'd get a storage unit. I mean, I don't have anything philosophically wrong with getting a storage unit, but I wouldn't necessarily, that wouldn't be my first choice, in other words. I'm not a collector, except of a few certain things, small things. Okay, next question. Well, you know what? Maybe I didn't answer that question fully. Do you tend to save everything or toss everything, and why? Well, I think I mentioned a few reasons why. So, question number 138. What's something you regret losing, selling, or giving away? Explain why. Okay, so as a person who tosses stuff away on a fairly regular basis, you might think that I would regret a number of things that I've lost, tossed, sold, or gave away. And it's true. I have run into situations when I've gotten rid of stuff and then regretted it later. Sometimes an hour later, sometimes weeks later, sometimes months later. So it happens. Um, one idea that pops into my mind is there was a time someone lent me a CD-ROM, a music CD, and I understood it as her giving me the music CD, and she understood it as her lending the music CD to me. It was a miscommunication, and we ended up parting ways in the end, but amicably. But here's the thing. When I took that music CD, I listened to it for a while and then gave it away when I was done. And I think I just gave it to Goodwill because I didn't want it anymore. I'd already listened to it as much as I had decided that I was going to. And of course, I offered to give the CD back to that individual again um, before I gave it away, but they didn't respond before I gave it to Goodwill. So the CD was lost. Um, though I regret tossing that CD. It doesn't sound like a big deal, and it wasn't a big deal. In fact, I've actually got a replacement for that CD and sent it back to the original owner. But I don't know. It happens on occasion that I regret having tossed something. Interestingly enough, it doesn't happen very often. Here's an example. Now, this is not the first time I've owned this book, this Bisquick cookbook that I showed to you earlier. I think I showed it to you yesterday. I've owned this cookbook before and then gave it away. Gave it away. And then I decided that I wanted it again. And so I reacquired the cookbook. So that's an example. That cookbook is an example of something that I tossed away and then wanted back again. And then I just got another copy. So it happens pretty regularly. I think it happens to minimalists all the time. But here as minimalists, we get information from that knowledge, right? I might be a little bit more hesitant to get rid of books and CDs with music on them now because of the experience that I've had wanting to reacquire those materials again. And so, this whole thing is a process of learning about my preferences and what I want to give away and what I want back afterwards. And so, it's a learning experience. And for the most part, I would guess for 80% of the stuff that I toss, I never want it again. That's a pretty good track record, if you ask me. That's a real good track record. And so I'm really pleased with the way things are. I mean, I wouldn't be a minimalist if there was something that didn't deeply suit my personality about minimalism. And indeed, I believe there is something deep, deep down in my soul. There's that metaphor again. There's something deep, deep down in my brain that appeals to minimalism and the minimalist movement. It just so happens that I don't need a lot. I'm grateful for the stuff that I have, and the stuff that I have brings me joy, right? I'm reminded of Maria Kondo and the the joy of tidying up, and her book, Marie Kondo. The things that I do have, the things that I keep close, I appreciate and enjoy and love daily, right? These are things that I'm reminded of regularly that I enjoy and love, and only those things are in my environment. And how great is that? I couldn't imagine living a more wonderful life, a more terrific life than being surrounded by things that I love, instead of things that draw me in neutral ways or draw me in negative ways. Pretty much everything I've got draws me in positive ways, and it's a wonderful way to live. And at the same time, my life is very uncluttered. Basically, all my flat surfaces in my home look great. They're clean and clear and flat, and there's room for me to place objects, to place stuff on these flat surfaces in case I need the flat surfaces. So those flat surfaces are available, and with that brings freedom and autonomy and respect for self and a lot of great virtues that relate to minimalism that I can relate to personally. And I love having those things in my life. Okay, next question. Question number 139. How absent minded do you get? And give an example. So, I am not that absent minded, at least in my own mind, which means I pay attention to the things that are important to me, and my mind does a pretty good job of doing it. Now, um, it's kind of interesting when I've interacted with people like my mom, say, or my former spouses. Sometimes they might be inclined to think that I am somewhat absent minded. But you know what? I think I'm only absent minded according to their own ideas about what's important, right? Their ideas about what's important do not necessarily jibe with my ideas about what's important. And so sometimes they consider me being absent minded. But um, anyway, I would say that that happens rarely. I tend to be a pretty sharp cookie. And I'm able to pay attention to the things that need to be paid attention to. So I'm not that absent-minded. Though I think there are aspects of absent-mindedness that exist. I do try to pay attention to it. I'm always I'm always looking out for areas where my brain could be improving its recall, and always looking forward to learning new things. And I keep my brain sharp. My workplace thankfully keeps my brain sharp. School keeps my brain sharp. Typically I take 2 night classes every semester, and so that keeps my brain sharp. I happen to know with very high levels of assurance that I am just as sharp as even young kids who are in college. I take community college classes regularly, and I routinely outperform 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old kids. This is routine outperformance. My brain is working on all 4 cylinders, on all 3 cylinders. It's functioning at least on all 3 cylinders, and I appreciate that. That may be the reason why sometimes I take courses at that local community college, because I use them as a sort of a way to compare my mental output, my mental performance with other people in a way that is what I'd call as objective as I can, right? A lot of these kids, they've been in school their whole lives. They're professional students. But me, I'm not a professional student. I'm a part-time night school student, and I go to school for fun. And because I've got that internal motivation, because I have an interest in doing well in the class, befriending the teacher, understanding the information, I'm that internal motivation helps my memory retention. And and like anyone else, as the semester wanes on, quite often I begin to lose interest little by little after I've been a little bit overexposed to a certain subject area by reading chapters upon chapters in a textbook. This whole process sort of gets old, but I recognize it as being valuable anyway. There are lessons to be learned about, as you reach the middle point and ending point of a class semester, a class's semester. And so, I'm pleased. Overall, I'm fairly pleased. And if I start seeing signs of dementia and Alzheimer's, I'll be the first to know. It is, after all, my brain, right? And I think with so many checks and balances on how my brain is performing, that I'll be able to nip any problems in the bud. And so I'm really pleased by that. So that's kind of a long way of answering how absent-minded do I get. I'd say on a scale from 1 to 10, my level of absent-mindedness, 10 being the worst absent-mindedness ever, and 1 being the least, being sharp as a tack. Oh, I'm probably 3 or, I'm probably, I said 1 being the least, sharp as a tack. I'm probably a 3 or 4. Here's the thing. I am not sharp as a tack, and I'm fine with not being sharp as a tack. Being sharp as a tack can be that when you're that sharp, well, it's an indicator of some virtues, but there might be other virtues that it's less an indicator of. High levels of sharpness, while I appreciate and enjoy, I'm just not there yet. My brain doesn't have that much horsepower. I'm relatively sharp, above average sharpness, but I'm not infinitely sharp or perfectly sharp, that's for sure. And I do have my moments of absent-mindedness regularly, daily, even hourly, but they don't have any impact on my life, which I'm quite thankful for. Okay, so next question. Question number 140. Which is better, your short-term or your long-term memory? Well, first off, I wish both would have improvements. I wish both would be improved. They're pretty good. And here's the thing about memory. Memory is only as good as the technique that you use to preserve it, to preserve that information. And so I think it says less, this question, although it seems to be referring to my physical and biological mind and the biological memory processes going on. I think really what that question is about, whether I have good short-term or long-term memory, is more about the techniques that I use to memorize short-term information and long-term information. And well, I'll tell you what the techniques are right now. So the techniques that I use, which I think are quite good, involve the link system, the link memory system. I also use a few other systems, like the method of loci, or also called the memory palace. And those systems work really well. I also use internal rehearsal methods and spaced repetition. So, these are memory techniques that I use to ensure that I can have adequate, satisfactory short-term memory and long-term memory retention. So I'm not sure if that's exactly what this question was getting at, but that's the way I interpreted it. I think that's probably the best way I could answer that question too. All right, next question. Question number 141. What's your idea of cute? That's a good question. Though I think that my idea of cute is basically everybody's idea of cute. I think my idea of cute has been formed through the forces of evolution. It's about adults doting on children, on babies, and it's just this human nature aspect to caring for youth and young. And what's cute is about proportion, right? The proportion of the eyes to the head, the proportion of the eyes to the nose to the head. I think I find cute what other people find cute. Big eyes, maybe small noses, big head. These are characteristics that babies have. And I think that that's just something that's been drummed into us by Mother Nature over this millennia. It's about taking care of offspring. That's what my idea of cute is. Okay, question number 142. Are you more inclined to build your own empire or unleash the potential of others? Explain. Well, I have almost zero interest in building my own empire. Um, when I think of building my own empire, I think of the care and the responsibility it takes to pull an empire together. It takes a lot of effort. And so I'm definitely more into the delegating side of that whole picture. I would much rather support other people who are interested in um, sort of expressing their potential. Yeah. Um, so, here's the problem with building your own empire. You've got to manage it once you get it. And here's the thing too, when it comes to building empires, one might think that being the leader of an empire frees you up to do amazingly wonderful things, but what I found is that empires restrict you. They strap you down. They, you're tied to these empires that you've created, and it limits your freedom. It limits your autonomy, and to me, that is a tragedy. Because here's why: because adventure and exploration requires freedom, right? And what better way to free yourself than to delegate to others and to unleash others' potential around you? Absolutely. Question number 143. What do you take for granted the most? Well, I think that's fairly easy to answer. Um, I think I take for granted the most every aspect of my body that is normally functioning. I think I take for granted just the sheer fact of my life and existence in the world, on the planet. And, I think I take for granted everything around me that supports me every day, like electricity, internet, water, all the utilities that I have access to, like gas, all the natural utilities that I have, like oxygen, nitrogen, the ground, um, the sun. I think I take those for granted. And socially, I take things for granted. My parents, my brothers and sisters, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, everyone that's around me, all the people that work in this small city, all the people in my workplace. I take them all for granted all the time. You know, I think one key element of being alive is taking a moment to consider just how grateful you are for what you have. You know, that is the key to happiness. It is Gratitude is something that can override strife and hardship, emotional pain and hurt, and it can refocus a person into healthier areas when sort of their story and the game tends to focus people's minds on things that are sad, disappointing, and trivial. So anyway, that's how I think about it right now. Okay, next question. Question number 144. How often do you interrupt others while they're speaking? Give a reason for your answer. Okay, so in general, I do not interrupt people that often. And when I do, though, I regret it. Number one, quite often. So that's my answer. I don't interrupt people that very often. I try very hard not to interrupt people. And that's just my way of conversing with people. And why, you may ask? Well, when someone's talking to me, my interest, my attitudes, my intention, my energies are devoted to understanding the other person. And if I'm talking If I'm making a statement, then I'm not, by definition, uh, trying to understand what other people are saying, unless it's a check, right? Unless I'm checking my guess about what's going on in their world. And so I try not to interrupt very much. In fact, being a good listener is something that's very, very important to me. Listening for me is a skill that I think probably tops almost any other skill that I have, even my technical skills. I think being a good listener, being an active listener, it conveys love, support, respect, compassion for whoever it is you're talking to. And that conveyance gets recognized and creates goodwill between you and others. And that is how I operate in the world, out of respect, goodwill, and positive regard, genuineness. Um, that's just how I operate. So I don't interrupt people very often. And when I do, quite often, I apologize. Next question. So, question number 145. Um, when you have nothing pressing, where does your mind drift? All right. So, these days, my mind drifts to either things that I really enjoy doing or problem areas. Okay. And I think most people are like this when they're daydreaming. Uh, they go to those places in their memory that they really love to hang out in. Um, Things that I've been doing and enjoying lately have been working out at the gym. So my mind will often go to the gym. It'll go to some workout routine or plans I have for the future. It also might my daydreaming might go toward imagining me and my running and my bicycling or my swimming. And that's where my mind drifts. It could drift there, or it could drift to food. I'm fascinated by cooking lately, and I've been really focused on plans regarding making cinnamon rolls and chicken pot pies and tortillas and brownies, and I can just go on and on and on. So that's where my mind goes. It goes to places where I'm interested, places where I'm focused, where I want to devote more energy. My mind also goes to places that are unpleasant, right? It's where there are problems. And I try to kick around some solutions to my problems and strategize and plan for the future. Essentially, it's planning what I'm going to do next quite often because there's often uncertainty about what happens, what's going to happen. And so that's where my mind will go. It'll go to to-do lists and things like that. Okay, question number 146. What are your career goals? Well, believe it or not, my career goals are basically to stay pretty much steady in my career. So I am in the phase where I am simply trying to maintain what I've got. Now, of course, in order to maintain what you've got, you often have to make strides in positive directions, to make improvements, increase efficiencies, just to stay where you're at. So, that's where I am at. For me, the work is just about incremental improvement. And when I talk about incremental, these are small increments. I'm not necessarily looking to work around the world on some tropical island next to a pool on a laptop. Although some people are actively interested in doing that, I'm not focused on acquiring a van or an RV and driving down to Panama and joining a yoga studio or doing a retreat down there. My focus is clearly, plainly in the present moment here in three space, just making the best of what's going on. So that's my career goals, sort of pretty steady as she goes. Question number 147. How competitive are you, and explain? So I'm not that competitive. If there's a game that's happening like chess, checkers, or video game, I'll try to win. but I won't get upset if I don't. I'm not that competitive. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't get swept up like anyone else in a competitive game, because I can. But it's just not something that happens very often. Most of the time, I'm engaged in play for enjoyment, for the purpose of enjoyment and only for enjoyment. For me, winning a game is just, it's kind of a non-starter for me. It's just it's not compelling, and whether I win or lose, to me, it doesn't matter very much. There are not a lot of games that I play where I've devoted a lot of energy into getting really good. Like, I don't play video games, not anymore. That's not to say I won't ever start up again, because I probably might start up again. That sounds like a pretty good idea, actually. But I don't necessarily think that I'm super duper competitive. Yeah, I'm not even what I might be marginally competitive, but it's not something that I spend a lot of time thinking like, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful if I won this game or I won this lottery or whatever. It's just not the way I think. Okay, question number 148. Are you a penny pincher or a big spender? Why? Well, I'm neither, really. I do try to get the highest quality products that I can. I try to do intelligent shopping. Um, I'm not a penny pincher. That is, I won't necessarily suffer the comforts, um, just to pinch a few pennies. So, Anyway, I think what I'll do is I'll wrap up this session with you right now. I just want to thank you for participating with me and bearing with me through my cold. And I hope you have a wonderful day today. I know your winter break is about to end. It's Friday, and your last day of winter break is on Sunday. And then you'll be returning to class and starting up the new semester with your new classes and your new teachers. And I can only imagine how exciting that is. Finishing out your freshman year in high school. I mean, what a joy. What a joy. I'm so pleased, and I'm proud of you for doing so well in school and being so committed to your own developing intelligence and developing maturity. It's just something that brings joy and pleasure to my heart. It also fills me with pride about my amazing daughter and all the cool things that she's doing in school. And you just make me so proud and so happy. I just want to say thank you for all the contributions that you've made to my life. And I'm just super grateful for being able to play a role, even a small role, in the life that you lead. And what's also great, I'm grateful for, is that we can be partners in this life, me supporting you, you supporting me, and work shoulder to shoulder to just basically be the best that we both can be. And I'm so grateful that that's just become reality. And so I hope you have a wonderful day today, a wonderful rest of the day, a wonderful weekend, and I hope you have a great time first day of school next semester, next week. And I guess I'll talk to you later. I love you, girl. Peace.